Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Need, and as usual, we are brought to you by Coaches Corner University. You can save $300 off of our Education Collective lifetime access with code podcast300. That is only going to be available for a short time only as we transition to a subscription-based service. But if you have lifetime access, you get lifetime access. You won't have to pay your subscription. We're also sponsored by Master Athletic Performance. If you're interested in working with myself or one of our coaches, you can go to www.masterathletic.com. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition, Barefoot Shoes, and Bacon and Barbells. Links for those discount codes can be found in the description. Today, I'm joined once again, a return guest, Mr. Stuart Locke. Stuart, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me back.
It's my pleasure. We are going to get in an argument today, publicly.
Yes.
No, actually. So Stuart and I both feel very strongly about something in the coaching community. And that is the number one thing that you should be concerned about is the value and the results that you provide for your clients. And one of the things that we see way too often is people are sacrificing service in the pursuit of money. And the person who is left holding the bag is ultimately the client who is left with a bad experience. Like, Stu, how many times can you count? I bet you've lost count of the number of times people come to you to work with you as their coach and they have negative things to say about their previous coach.
Yeah, probably 25% of the people I've worked with, it was either the coach didn't listen to whatever problems they were having and didn't ever update the program to reflect those, or they were late with programs, or they didn't watch their videos, or they take a week to get back, or just something along the lines of not doing their job.
Yeah. And this is something like you cannot hire a coach and then not be coached. Like, I feel like that's so simple. It's stupid.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing too is like I literally just posted about this today. Is like there is this, because I've done a couple of strategy calls with business owners and coaches lately, and they've all kind of said the same thing, which is like, oh, well, like I don't want to be salesy. Like there's all these bad coaches out there, and I'm like, okay, well, they're taking the clients because they're talking about their services, and then you have this like air of superiority where it's like, well, I'd never be like that, but then you're not taking those potential clients and putting them into a better service structure. So you're losing and the client's losing. So it's like I don't know. I think a lot of the issues related to service are the people who are going to give good service for whatever reason. It's like paradoxical, right? Like they're lower in confidence, and the people who are going to give bad service are confident enough to be able to market well enough to get clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I always speak about with the mentees that I have is like, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, are you acquiring the clients that are actually going to fit the avatar that you've set? And the only way to get those clients is to actually speak to them. So if you're unwilling to put out content that speaks to the person you're trying to speak to, and then you're going to then turn around and badmouth the other coaches who do that, what are you trying to solve? Like, at what point are you just yelling at the clouds? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know if you told me about this or someone else told me about this. Like, have you heard of like the mathematician's apology?
Yes.
Okay, so it's essentially like no one who's a critic has ever pushed a field forward in their entire life.
Yep.
And so it's like the only solution to something not being good is to improve upon it as opposed to complain about it. And like that was something that I struggled with because I'm at my heart, a hater, which is something I'm actively working on. And
Yep.
but it's just like, I wasted so much mental effort and energy for so long on that, and it never grew my business 1 cent. And then I was like, okay, well, just put out productive, helpful, educational things that show people worth and value and reap the rewards. Like, do not concern yourself with what someone who doesn't pay your bills does. Like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. That last line to me is what hits home. And I think a lot of people get stuck maybe playing the comparison game or like saying, I should be here, I should be there. You are where you should be. Like, you are where you are. And the only way to do anything about it is to move forward. It's actually one of my biggest issues with this trend of like stitching content together. So like playing someone else's video and then you giving your feedback on it, to me, is just inherently negative. And it plays off of your desire to capitalize on that person's notoriety to build your success. And in my eyes, it's the same thing as complaining about what other people are doing to try to bring energy to you. It's like, all other coaches suck and I'm the best. It's like, or you could just be the best. You could just showcase what makes you the best. Um, I stole that quote, not in reference to the mathematician's apology, but in reference to like the solution to bad information is better information. And that's what I've tried to like do with my marketing, is not to
Mhm.
call people out, so to speak, more so to point out that there are better ways to do things
Mhm.
and just not even reference those other people.
It doesn't, and the thing too, and I think the mistake that a lot of coaches make is I think they think consumers are a lot dumber and a lot less socially aware than they are.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
and it's like, no, it's like, dude, it's like if you're consistently putting out like kind of angry, negative stuff, people see that and then they associate with you because they potentially don't know you in person as an angry, negative person. And that's not going to push you into their graces, right? That's not going to, take you from a person on the internet to potentially a coach for them. And and the thing too is like if you have people who sign up who are interested in that, and you're not at your core like a super angry negative person, you're just doing rage bait online. That's also similarly probably going to be a client who you really don't get along with because they're an angry negative person.
So there's something to pull out of that, but I want to circle back. You said at the beginning, you're like, I've been victim of this too because I am a hater.
Yeah.
Like, you have made that type of content in the past. I think it's valuable to share your experience with, why that wasn't successful and why you pivoted away from it.
Well, the reality is, right? Like, I think our mental diet, just as a generality, like, kind of influences like physiological state. I think it influences kind of just how we feel day to day. Like, and when you are consistently going to that, right? And especially like someone like you and I who spend, a fair amount of time on social media because our businesses, at least to some degree, hinge on it. Um, you just end up being unhappy. And, views doesn't necessarily equal clients. And there's
100%.
not this immediate direct ROI on views and followers to revenue. And so the mistake that I made earlier was, you put out rage bait stuff and you get, lots of eyeballs and you get lots of shares and you get lots of followers. But when I was doing that, right, I went through a period from January 24 to right when I got hurt. So May, and like I gained like 10,000 followers and I had no new clients. And granted, my roster was full, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it's not like I was also getting a ton of inquiries.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I had this huge growth and it helped zero. And I think the eyeballs and the views on content are really attractive for people because they've been told that those are the metrics that matter. Um, but ultimately, that's not because those aren't leads.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and I'm glad you're able to share that perspective because it's something that I try to preach very heavily, that slow growth is sustainable growth, right? If you are only gaining two clients a month, but you never lose any clients, at the end of the year you've gained 24 clients. That's a substantial growth in your roster size over the course of a year. And when you factor in customer lifetime value, when your average client retention rate is over a year, your income scales very, very quickly. But it hinges on your ability to take that slow, progressive approach, on speak to the right people, onboard the right people. I've been invited, behind the curtain, so to speak, to a lot of these very successful online coaching businesses, and it's been both eye-opening. It's been eye-opening. It's been disheartening, and it's also been kind of enlightening to know that those people who do it the right way make a lot of money, which I love to
Mhm.
see. If you're a great coach, you do great work, you make a lot of money. Fucking good for you. We need more of that. But then there's the nefarious coaching where you have, lead gen influencer X, team of ghost coaches underneath. And all these clients who are working with said coach are actually working with a coach who's pretending to be that influencer. That to me is like the most nefarious business model. But then you have people just blatantly lying. People with massive followings who say they're making tons of money, but are truly just, I did $100,000 this month. It's like, yeah, cool, but you made $0 the next 4 months.
Well, and then the other
So,
part too is uh, the delineation between revenue and profit, right? Like there was someone I
yeah,
saw, someone sent me someone, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like I hit my first $100,000 month," and then they were laying out their business structure, and they had like 10 employees plus this guy, and I was like, and I'm doing the math, and I was like, 100,000 divided by 11, minus whatever costs you have for overhead, like there's not really much profit left to go around. And it's I think it's people chase these big numbers because the big numbers are flashy, but at the end of the day, the metric of a healthy company is a high profit margin and a high monthly recurring revenue, right? It's not these huge undulations and like, I had $60,000 one month and then I had to, service those clients for the next 6 months because I ran a special. It's like consistent. You can't retire on low monthly recurring revenue. You can't retire on low profit margins. You literally, it's not a sustainable business.
I know of a guy, I won't name any names, but I know of a guy who made $90,000 profit on $1 million revenue.
What's the point? What's the point?
Yeah. What's the point? Um, the other thing I'll say, so in that same vein, if your only goal is customer acquisition, you have to ask yourself why you are constantly trying to acquire clients. And there's only two reasonable answers is you can't keep them, and then you're also not getting any referrals. So to me, those two metrics of customer lifetime value or retention, like length of retention and number of referrals, those are the only two key indicators of a healthy value-based business.
100%. And I had this conversation with Tim like last week, which is like, you never want to end up in a business where it's like you have really high churn. And it's like, yeah, technically, as long as acquisition outpaces churn, you're okay. But then it ends up this like soulless marketing machine where it's like you got 50 coming in every month, you got 47 leaving every month, and you're only +3. And it's like, to what benefit, right? Because like, especially when you're always scrambling to acquire new clients, because without that, maybe you're not making any money. That's a very stressful state to be in. That's a very uncomfortable business to run. And you're like, the moment you're stressed in business, you start making dumb decisions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad. Listen, and this is one thing, you and I kind of joked about when we booked the podcast. We are going to go out here and argue, and I'm like, we're going to agree on 99% of things.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, we talked about marketing. I think we're both on the same page. You have to market to the right person. You have to be active online. You have to do it with integrity. Because at the end of the day, people are going to buy coaching from you because they know you, like you, and trust you. How are they supposed to do that if you never actually showcase who you truly are?
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit about service delivery because it's actually a
Mm-hmm.
subject that I don't get into much on the podcast, and I wish
Mm-hmm.
I did. I think this is the perfect opportunity. So, at the core of coaching, you have the intervention that you're delivering, whether it be training, nutrition and training. And then you have a relationship aspect that you're building with that client.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many different ways to go into the process of administrating that over the long term.
Mm-hmm.
What is your business model from this is how I coach a client? Like
Yeah.
X's and O's stuff, not like programming and shit like that.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, like it comes down to where the client is, in their, I don't know, lifetime with me, right? So I know, right? Like my average client length is 26 months. And the people that I've had, like I've had probably 15% of my roster now has been with me for at least 5 years. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that those people, in terms of uh, the degree to which I need to respond to them on a very, very, very timely basis in case something is going wrong, like it's it's probably not necessary with those people because we've been together for so long that there's a lot of little things that they can debug on their own, and they're kind of self-driving cars at that point. I'm not getting that much communication from them anyways. They're sending over training videos, and that's kind of about it. But they've run through so much programming over such a long period of time that they kind of know the shtick, right? And then there's people where you have to skill them up to that level where you can be a little bit more hands off. And so, you know, um, I have been known, generally speaking, to give pretty quick response times to people. Um, and I think there's a huge benefit to that because if you can fix something very quickly, oftentimes you can fix, if you fix it the first time and you fix it well enough the first time, then you actually, I think, make less work for yourself in the long run because you probably don't have to fix it again, right? You hit them the first time and they're like, okay, well, I don't have to do this again. Um, and that happens more earlier on in a client's journey with you. Because you kind of there's an onboarding process, there's a learning curve, and the further along they get, one, they don't need you to hold their hand as much, um, and two, they're a lot more autonomous. And so initially, my thought was, okay, I got to respond to everyone on a very, very quick timeline all the time. But now it's almost like hierarchical in the sense that like the newer people, like I have to kind of communicate on a very, very short timeline with them or a reasonable timeline with them because I have to be able to build them up to the point where they're autonomous. But with my longer form people, like, dude, like half of them send me videos at the end of the day because they're like, bro, like I didn't do anything wrong. I know how to look at my own video and know that I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just looking for a second set of eyes. And 30% of the time, I'm like, yep, looks good. Keep it up. Let me know if there's any issues. So I think that's been the huge lateralization in my practice probably in the last 18 months. Whereas before it was almost this neurotic compulsion to 24/7 be responding. Um, and I think I actually coached myself into more problems than I coached myself out of.
How often? So you're reviewing videos every day. You're trying to review videos as quickly as they come in.
Mm-hmm.
How often are you issuing programming? How long are the programming blocks that you write?
Yeah, so it's once a month. So I write out a block at a time, and then whatever adjustments needed, I. So for instance, the end of the first week, biceps are blown up on the low bar. I'll shuffle things around. Like Paul, like I'm helping prep him for this meet on March 29th, and like his last bench session went
Nice.
terribly. So this morning I just went through and I modified his program, switched his days around. So it's a month with updates as needed. And then I've spaced things out well enough where, it's maybe 3 or 3.5 hours of work on a Sunday.
Okay. And do your clients have any formal check-ins with you?
No. So the expectation with them is on training days, they're sending over training footage and they're also giving me context for the training footage. So they're like, hey, came in after work, rough day at work. Didn't sleep really well last night, and then they sent over the training footage. So if something's wrong in the training, we can probably point to externals first. And if everything's great and training's fucked up, then we modify training. Um, and then on non-training days, it's just like a sentence or two of like, yep, slept kind of funny, hips a little funny. I'll do the drills that you sent over. So there's
Okay.
no formal check-in process. It's just kind of on a daily basis for a couple sentences.
Perfect. So I want to highlight, and you get great results with your clients.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Stuart's model is videos are very frequent, communication is very high, programming is issued 4 weeks at a time, but edited as needed.
Mm-hmm.
High communication. Okay. So you're leveraging communication very highly. My model, a little bit different. I issue training 1 week at a time. My clients have a daily questionnaire that they fill out, and they send me videos on all their training days. They have a weekly check-in form that they fill out, and I do a Loom video reply to all of their check-in videos once a week. And I review their training videos within 24 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So we're communicating probably 3 to 4 times a week, if not more. Many clients, it's daily. So again, heavily leveraged into communication, but probably a little bit less urgent replies than you.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a daily questionnaire, weekly training. So realistically, I could be writing it once a month because not much changes week to week, but
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to iterate on a weekly basis for my own organization.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. So basically, two different models that heavily leverage communication in different ways. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
metric driven, and communication interpersonally, kind of the same as you, but a little bit longer timelines. So
Mm-hmm.
the debate between you and I say debate between you and I, it's not a fucking debate. It's just a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
Your thought process is if I can get back to this person as soon as possible, even within a training session, I
Mm-hmm.
can solve a problem before it becomes a real issue in the long term,
Mm-hmm.
which on the surface, I used to do the same thing. I mean, I coached you for 6 years. You
Yeah.
saw it. Then I actually was in speaking with Dave Osborne because Dave did his research on communication with clients in powerlifting coaching online.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that the best results actually came when you delivered your feedback either right before the training session was about to take place
Mm-hmm.
or immediately after. And the
Mm-hmm.
rationale for that was that if you communicate and solve the problems for them in the session, they lose a little bit of autonomy, which I get. And with more experienced athlete, I could see that being so much more beneficial. But I
Mm-hmm.
also see the argument in the other direction where you're saying is, well, if at first, let's fix these problems for them so they learn how to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you allow them more space and more autonomy as you go on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think ultimately, like the way that I've always conceptualized of it is like I have to solve the problem and I have to have them understand why we're solving the problem this way.
Agreed. Yeah.
So if let's say out to dinner, I'll, like leave my phone at home, I have an away message set for 3 or 4 hours, I come back and I have 4 or 5 clients who sent through training. I'm very, very comprehensive in my response to those people. Probably, a couple of minutes in length, including videos, to get them to understand it's like, this is the issue I'm seeing. This is the solution we have for this. In the future, when this is popping up in our head and I'm not there, this has to be your thought process in order to rectify this problem. And
Mm-hmm.
when I explain it well enough, even if it's not immediately, oftentimes that problem doesn't present again. And I was having a conversation so Gus Cook and Sarah Rainbow were here last weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
Gus has coached Sarah for 10 years. Sarah's got the highest female total of all time in powerlifting, exceptional lifter. And, Gus does a 24-hour
Didn't
turnaround.
she squat? She squatted in the cage, didn't she?
Yeah, 660 for 3.
She's, yeah. What the fuck?
Dude, she's a beast. And so I was talking with Gus about it, and he's like, yeah, he's like, we do 24-hour response times. But what he's done, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, is whenever he sees a similarity or a trend in terms of like multiple clients potentially having the same issue, he'll
Mm-hmm.
film a longer form video for it, explain it in depth, and then he'll give them the feedback, and he's like, hey, I need you to watch this video. And that's all kind of held in like a client repository so they can access it on their own as well. And so for
Mm-hmm.
him, he's like, they're paying me to solve the problem. And if I can explain it well enough and then they watch the video, that solves the problem. And then I don't need to coach them out of that again in the future. And that was a big light bulb moment for me because I'm like, yeah, ultimately, like intrasession, especially, intermediate prep if someone's fucked up or whatever, like I think intrasession responses are really, really beneficial. But the other side of it is that's not always feasible. And whenever the communication is, it has to be effective enough that it solves the problem. That's what it comes down to, right? I don't think that there is
Mm-hmm.
a I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it. I think it just has to be comprehensive enough that it solves the problem. Because what you're doing with daily communication, right? You're doing a daily tracking metrics,
Mm-hmm.
weekly check-in, weekly programming. That's very, very comprehensive, and you're
Oh yeah.
solving the issues that they're coming to you with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I totally agree with you on all fronts, and I actually think that's a phenomenal idea. Um, I want to get into the nuts and bolts. There's one thing that I want to pull out at the end of this
Mm-hmm.
about solving the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And because you said there's no wrong way of doing it, the wrong way of doing it is not fucking doing it.
Yeah.
Like if you are a coach and you are taking there's two wrong ways to do it. Number one, reviewing videos once a week. Number one, it's going to take you fucking forever to do it and update your programs. Number two, it allows the client to make multiple mistakes throughout the week that you could have fixed immediately and not have it carry over to session, especially if we're talking powerlifting and we're getting into like multiple squat exposures, multiple bench deadlift exposures. Fix it after the first one. Just do them that solid. And then the last is if you're letting your clients send you videos, ask you questions, and you are not responding to all of them, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we need to say anything more about that one.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, I think ultimately what it comes down to is like, you have to, I think when you're developing a system, whatever that system is, you have to start with a system and you have to scale to a point where that system will eventually break down, and then you have to refine within that system, right? So many people, like, before they even start, are so consumed with like, oh, well, what's the best way? What's the optimal way? What's the ideal way? I was like, well, one, you're going to have a way that's probably most congruent with just how you are as a person, right? Like, I'm kind of a high energy schizo person, right? I'm just like blah 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 blah. And so for me, like, that communication frequency and that kind of response time is congruent with my personality. And I've done it this way for 5 years, and I've not really ever had any issues. But if someone who's not like me, who's more thoughtful, who's more analytical, were to try to do it in my way, it's probably not going to work. So start with a system, scale the system in terms of clients till you start to have issues, and then figure out what those issues are and figure out a creative solution to those issues. And then you just keep refining that system over time. And then, the two metrics you're going to be paying attention to are churn and client results, right? Is that if churn is low and client results are high, you're probably doing the right thing. If churn is high and client results are low, you're probably doing the wrong thing and you need to refine something.
Yeah, I think you'll like you mentioned it, you need to enjoy the process too. And I mean, for me, I'm a very analytical person, and if I'm doing video reviews, I'm sitting down at my laptop doing video reviews. I'm not out with my I'm out doing errands and replying to videos and whatever. I'll reply the way our app works is the videos are uploaded in the workouts, and then I have DMs for questions. I'll answer DMs when I'm out. And so there's a lot of communication in DMs. But if I'm doing video reviews, I'm doing video reviews because I want to be present and engaged while I do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, like you nailed it. It's just, are you getting results? Are people happy? Can you continue to feed people into the system? And then, but you will get to a point where, regardless of what system you use, if you're providing a value-based solution, you do cap your clients. You
Yes.
you cannot carry a high roster. I remember I got to one point a couple of years ago where I was about 80 clients. And
Mm-hmm.
this was when I was just only coaching, and it was all day, every day, nonstop. It just wasn't sustainable.
No.
I cap myself now at 40 clients because I'm still doing the mentorship stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a great cadence. I can provide amazing service and I still have the boundaries where I have some time to myself. What have you found is like your cap of clients?
So my cap's 50. I mean, like, much like you, like, I got as high as 67 early in 2021. And it was just insane. Like, I mean, I was averaging like 13, 14 hours of screen time a day. And I was like, this is fucking insane and completely unsustainable. Um, and then I bumped my rates aggressively enough that I had some drop off. And I think that's what it comes down to, right? You can either scale clients or you can scale, your amount that you're charging. I think if you have a value-based business and a service-based business, you should probably, what I typically tell people is at the start, get yourself to 50 as quickly as you can, see if that's sustainable for you. And then once you're at 50, at a reasonable dollar value, you start to scale that dollar value as you improve as a coach. And then you're going to find your happy equilibrium. And then you just kind of work backwards. It's like, okay, well, like, what do I want for my monthly? How many clients would I need in order to hit that monthly? And that's kind of how you do it. But I think, it's not sustainable to keep scaling clients. It's never sustainable to keep scaling
No.
clients. And people, who I'm hearing have a roster of, 80, 90, 100 people. I'm like, there's no, unless you are spending 10 to 12 hours a day in front of your computer every day, there's no way those people are getting what they pay for. So it would make more sense to double your rate and have half the
No.
clients.
No, you're yeah, that if you have that many clients, you're writing programs, you're not coaching.
No.
And even then, because you're not coaching, you're probably writing shit programs.
Exactly, because there's no information that you're getting back in. And so,
Exactly.
I think what it comes down to is, and something that you've done exceptionally well at, is you understood, you're
Well,
like,
thank
hey,
you.
you know what? There's probably a reasonable cap on the amount of clients that I have. I want to increase my revenue beyond that. So there is another vehicle that I have to pursue to continue to scale revenue that is not limited within clients. There's something else. I have these great lessons that I can teach people. I understand how to build a sustainable value based business, all these sorts of things. So that I'm gonna move in the mentorship direction, and now that's a very consistent source of revenue for you, and you have your clients. And the benefit of that now as a business is you have income coming in from multiple streams, which means that if something drops off a little bit or this one other thing drops off a little bit, you're not freaking out. And so I think,
Yep.
if you want to scale to what is possible, which is much higher than people realize, you have to
Yes.
realize
Totally.
that you're either going to go the route of like super high ticket executive coaching, where you're literally just coaching guys that are CEOs, or you have to kind of figure something else out. And that's the process that we're kind of going through, with our company. And we've created like a decent funnel for that. And we've scaled in terms of the coaches that we have, because for me, I'm like, I'm limited here. I still want revenue to increase, but I'm not willing to compromise on my service to increase revenue. So, it's either, I can't remember who said it, but when you're scaling, you either give up on service or you give up some modicum of control. Because if you give up on service, meaning you're just scaling your own clients, or you give up on control, meaning you bring someone else on to coach clients underneath you, and then whatever proportional agreement you have with them is how you make additional revenue.
Yeah. The mentorship for me was, yeah, it was a way to scale income, and it was a way to, for me, it was more so though a way to scale impact. Because like, I think I would be sitting here and lying if I said that making a lot of money isn't cool. Like,
Yeah.
making a lot of money is really cool, but what is a lot of money to me now is a lot different than what is a lot of money to me maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of money might be different later. But the one thing that will be consistent from the moment I started coaching to the moment I hang it up is impact. So I think the way that we conceptualize success is going to be really important into how we choose to scale our coaching. Because when I love the one-to-one connection, I love
Mm-hmm.
creating relationships with my clients, and having an impact on someone is fantastic. But when I looked at mentorship, I looked at it as an opportunity to have an impact on all of the clients that coach is then going to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So that web underneath my touch point expanded, and that got really exciting, especially when I started seeing coaches, scale their rosters up by like 10, 15 people. I'm like, that's 10 or 15 more people that this coach is going to be able to positively impact and have a great experience in health and fitness. And I don't like, my mentorship doesn't sell fast results, because to me, there's no such thing, because fast results don't last. And coming back full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning, like, you have to take your time to slowly grow while not, like you said, not sacrificing service. That
Yeah.
cannot be something that you sacrifice ever.
No. And it's
Your business will die.
well, and it's almost like it's already over and you're just waiting for the shooting to start. You know what I mean? It's like you've already fucked your business, and you've
Yeah.
already put yourself in a position where it's like you have a pretty short timeline on this, and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's a horrible feeling to have. And I think, like by the grace of God, I've been, fortunate enough that probably 65% of my clients are also coaches. And so
Mhm.
when I communicate with them or when I explain things to them, I'm like, wow, this is great because now all of the people that they work with are also positively impacted. And then,
Yep.
much in the same way, right? Like I was on the education department at Good Life, and then now I've been working for Prescript for 5 years in May, and we've run, I don't know, 7, 8 iterations of the barbell course. And all of the people that have run through the barbell course now understand how to effectively coach their clients in squat, bench press, and deadlift. So it's this idea of like, and I don't know who coined the catchphrase of like meta impact, but that's what it is, right? And it's because I think
Yeah.
it's you can make a lot of money and you can still be pretty unhappy. That's what people don't realize. Is like you can make lots of money and you can realize that money probably wasn't what was going to fill that hole. Um, and meaning is what's going to fill that hole. And so if you
Yeah.
really like, if you're just like doing this thing and not really helping people other than like you took a guy who squatted 700 pounds and now he squats 800 pounds, like, okay, all right, that's kind
Yeah.
of cool, I guess. But when you see someone who comes in and they were maybe a lower confidence coach at the beginning and they really didn't understand things well, and then they come in and you've gotten them to understand training better, you've gotten them to scale their business, you've gotten them to improve holistically as a person, that becomes fulfilling. And that fulfillment is also what allows you to continue pushing and continue working in your business, even when you particularly don't feel like it. Because that's a huge thing is like, if you're fulfilled enough, you're going to want to continue to grow and build this thing. But if you're not, you're like, I don't want to fucking talk to these people.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. The idea I've actually, because I get to speak to so many coaches on the podcast, I've noticed a very common thread. All the coaches who have set out initially to scale their businesses, if they didn't do the job to figure out what their ideal, like their ideal day or their ideal life or their ideal workload or whatever kind of end goal they were after, they didn't clarify that in the beginning. What ends up happening is they scale to a certain point, say fuck this, and end up regressing to a point where they feel happy. So they go through all of these stages of unhappiness and stress only to end up at a happy place they should have started looking for sooner.
Because there was
And
no, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna add, like, and I'm guilty of this too because I had the app, right? So I built up this app to try and get to this place where I had a ton of impact on a bunch of people, and then I realized, like, wow, this sucks. I don't like this, and then I scrapped it and ended up losing 100 grand. It's like, yeah, but I gained a lot of experience, and now I'm really fucking happy.
Yeah. And I think the thing too is like, and this kind of bleeds into another point too, which is like, I think a lot of people are like really weird about the coach client relationship, right? Like they're like, oh, I'm your coach and you're my client. I'm your coach and you're my athlete. Like, da, da, da. It's like, okay, well, like you're going to be more incentivized to help someone who you have some modicum of a relationship with,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's this like soulless golem where it's like it's a check in, very blank feedback, da, 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 it's like, okay, well, that's not fucking fun, right? And it's like you're not developing a relationship with these people. It's like you can take person A out and put person B in, and your experience is the exact fucking same. And like
Yeah.
last Christmas, Gemini sat down and we wrote like 150 Christmas cards, and we sent them to every single person who's a patient of Gems or every single one of my clients because
Do
I
you ever
want
feel
these.
bad that you
Go
Sorry, I
ahead.
was gonna say, do you ever feel bad that like people who you like but aren't currently your clients don't get Christmas cards at Christmas?
Yeah.
I felt bad. I did that too, and I felt so bad. I was like, oh, I really liked so and so, but they're not my client right now, and whatever.
Yeah. Well, and it's but the thing is like at the end of the day, like, and I had this conversation with Junto on the podcast last week, was like, yeah, it's a service-based business, but the basis of a service-based business is a relationship.
Yes, 100%.
And yeah, there's a coach-client relationship, but also like perfect example, right? Like there's plenty of guys that I have who are into like heavier music, right? I'm into heavier music. I was a hardcore kid growing up. And so like if there's a band that I know that they like and my release radar comes out on Friday on Spotify and there's a new song from them, I'm going to send that song to them because I'm like, I like this. I know you'll like this. And it's an additional touch point where it's like, you understand that I'm not just a person who writes your programs and watches your videos.
Hmm. Yeah. There have been clients who, like, I've had clients with me that have gone through divorces or gone through marriages. Like I've been invited to weddings. Like I've been, man, telling me, oh, you're the first person I told when I found out my wife was pregnant. I'm like, that to me is so fucking profound. And I can't think of another profession that allows you to share those milestones with people like coaching does. Um, One of the things I think about often is the vulnerability associated in the coach athlete relationship on both sides. That client, when they're reporting to you, like, as you said, the context of their training session, they're going to have to be honest about some things that they probably don't want to be honest about. And then you have to be in a position to receive that information without judgment, respond back to it with empathy, and then provide them actionable steps to take to remedy the situation, or even just give them validation that they did a good job, even though they felt like shit, which is probably going to make them feel better.
Yeah.
Like that vulnerability, like if we take that level of vulnerability and you say, this is the type of client relationship that I want to have with every single person I work with. And then you go out and you try to pretend to be somebody else on social media, you're not going to be able to get that. So let's reverse engineer, right? We've talked about it a couple times. You talked about it with income. It's like, how much do I want to make? How many clients do I need to have? How much do I charge? Reverse engineer from the top. Well, let's reverse engineer from that client relationship and say, this is the deep, meaningful connection that I want to have with people. How do I need to represent myself at the top of that funnel in order to bring people in who are interested in that type of relationship?
Mm-hmm.
That's your fucking marketing. Go do
Yeah.
that.
And I think the best metric that you can have for knowing that you're doing the right thing is like, I've had, I do probably 4 or 5 strategy calls a week with just people who aren't current clients. They just want some help. And the most consistent feedback I get from those is like, wow, you're the exact same on this call that you are on social media. I was like, yeah, no, I am just an unhinged person. This isn't like a
Yeah,
shtick.
you're fucking batshit.
Yeah. And so,
No.
and the thing too is like that inauthenticity too, and like when it goes back to that concept of the informed consumer, people can tell, right? People can tell that
Oh
it's a
yeah.
front. People can tell that it's a facade, and then the moment that starts to be apparent to people, that gives people the ick, right? It's like people don't like to be sold, and the moment you're inauthentic, then it becomes this like weird kind of salesy thing because it's like, well, why are you being like this?
Yeah. I To be completely transparent, because no one listens to this, it's just me and you having a conversation. Um, Being online in short form content is still like super awkward to me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not a short content kind of guy. I'm more of a long form conversation, nuanced thought process, and I'm in general a much more serious person.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the short form stuff has actually got me out of my shell a little bit, and like I can be silly and I can make jokes, and the little skits that I do with Liv sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
like it's funny because the response I get from my clients on those types of things, they're like, I'm so glad you're showing people your personality, because I know you as this kind of like silly guy who actually cares and is funny, rather than this like uber serious nerd.
Well, and here's the other thing, right? Like, so I've known you, it'll be what, 9 years in June?
Yeah. Yeah.
9 years. Anyone listen to this podcast? Paul O'Neill can be a very serious person. Paul O'Neill is a joyful, whimsical, goofy person,
Yeah.
right? And I think and in actuality, like, one, you're very funny. Two, you're very approachable. Three, you're very affable. And so it's like, that's what I find kind of funny because I'm like, dude, just be yourself because that
It's
is
tough.
way, and it is hard. It is hard. And I think,
Yeah.
honestly, the only reason why I'm able to do it as easily as I am, and this is, I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack for this, is I did drama in high school. So I'm really comfortable just like talking generally. And
Hmm.
I mean, if anyone knows me in real life, you know I can't shut the fuck up, anyways. Um, but it's an uncomfortable process, and I think even when I'm helping people with creating content, I'm like, dude, you just gotta fucking loosen up. You gotta fucking relax. You gotta just take a deep breath. You're fucking good.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually just started just filming all my shit one off. I film it in one take and then I'm done. I send it off to my editor. I'm like, fucking do whatever you want with this. I don't give a shit.
Well, and
And the results are so much better.
yeah, so with Jalen, like what we do is because Jalen Grassman is the guy who films all my content, and so I'll come in with ideas, and we give ourselves like a time limit. We're like, okay, 10 minutes. We got to bang out five, and then because of that, I'm like, okay, I have to be able to condense this down to like 15 to 20 seconds. I have to be able to get the point across, and I have to be able to grab people's attention. And I'm like, okay, go, and I'll hype myself up for like 2 minutes, and then I do it, and then magically it comes across as like way better. But I think because the moment people like get into their head too, they're like, "Oh, that one wasn't good enough. That one wasn't good enough. That one, it's good enough because it's you. That's good enough."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually want to come back a little bit to the client communication because I
Mm-hmm.
want to touch on the X's and O's of how we communicate with clients. So, one of the things that I get hung up on with a lot of young coaches is there's essentially three ways to reply. Or well, yeah, there's three ways to reply. You can either reply via text, so you can type out your response. You can record a voice note, or you could potentially record a video, like a Loom video for their videos. So you go through maybe all of their videos in one session in a Loom video and then send it per session. What is your preferred method for providing feedback on videos, and why do you choose that one?
So I do voice notes because I want people to be able to play it at 2 times speed if they want to. And Loom magically gives you the ability to play on 2 times speed, anyways. But for me, like I talk pretty quickly, generally speaking, and so I can pretty effectively communicate a point in 15 to 30 seconds. And my fingers are fat, so I don't type as quickly as I talk. Um, and so I've always done voice notes with longer form stuff. I'll film a video. I really honestly, unless I'm like actively on a phone call with someone I don't want to talk to, like an accountant, and I'm getting videos in, that's the only time I'll text someone in response.
Okay. So I personally I've experimented with all of them. And the challenge with Loom is it's a click into a web page, into a video. So it takes a lot longer for the client.
Mm-hmm.
The quality is probably about the same as a voice note, except you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of go through the video and point stuff out. So the videos end up tending to be longer and they actually have to sit down and watch them. So you might get a little bit more of a robust like feedback, but the friction associated with that feedback is way higher.
Mm-hmm.
Voice notes for me are a tough one because they're way faster for me to record and I can
Mm-hmm.
provide a lot more information. But for the client to revisit it on the following session, they actually have to re-listen to the voice note, which it
Mm-hmm.
takes more time. What I have fallen onto is a phenomenal tool, and they should absolutely sponsor me, is an app called Whisper. So Whisper is a dictation software, but it uses AI to correct your grammar. So you can record it like a voice note and it pastes it as text, and it's absolutely perfect. So I find for me, obviously recording voice notes is way easier for you as a coach because you just have to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But now I get the ability to talk and the client still gets to see text, and it's easier for them to re-review it prior to the session.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've fallen onto. And I've been like waiting for a podcast to talk about this app because the first time I used it, dude, I'm not even lying, because I used to type everything out because I was like, okay, I'm not going to record a Loom. It's too much friction. I'm just going to type it out so they can see it. I saved myself 4.5 hours one week.
Fantastic.
I was like, this is amazing. I felt the same way about Whisper as I did about Loom because I used to type out all my check-in responses.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, I can speak way faster than I can type. And the other benefit to Loom that I forgot to mention, and the reason I bias Loom for check-ins on a weekly basis, is I want my clients to be able to see my face and hear my voice as often as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that limits engagement in an online coaching relationship is the lack of proximity. So I call it the proximity gap. if you're seeing a person in person for training on a weekly basis, like you're actually connecting with that person physically weekly. The only way to do that online is with more voice and more video.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, voice notes are fantastic because you can hear the inflection in the voice. You can actually take a little bit of tone away from it, as opposed to a text message or just text. It can come off a little bit dry.
And that's part of my issue is because my fingers are fat and I don't text as quickly as I should. And I also
Oh,
like make the mistake of like I text, it's like a stream of consciousness. You've got my text, it'll be like 5 in a row that could have been one paragraph.
yep.
And so the other problem with that is it comes across as kind of it's a little
Like
too blunt.
it's like
Like you can't.
you're speaking at someone, not to them.
Yeah, it's a little blunt. And so for me, I'm like, because I've texted people stuff, and then be like, they'd like get upset. I'm like, what do you think I said? And they're like, well, like you said this, but like it came across like this. And I was like, oh fuck, okay, well, I
You know what the biggest reason I biased away from voice notes is because I fucking hate receiving them.
2 times speed. That's the only way I listen to them.
No. I literally I'm gonna call him out because I know he's probably never gonna listen to this podcast. One of my clients, he's been with me over a year now. His name's Pat Hughes. Fucking 11 out of 10 human being. Love him. When I was in Chicago recently, we met up, spent some time together. It was great. My first week working with Pat, he sent me a 7-minute voice note.
Not doing it.
I replied back, "Hey, sorry, dude, my phone isn't letting me listen to this. Can you type it out?" And it was literally 3 sentences. And I was like, this is why I don't do voice notes. So the reason I don't do voice notes to clients is because I don't want to receive them back.
Yeah, because you're opening the door. And the thing too is like I've definitely done that before where I get like a 3.5 minute voice and I'm like, hey, I'm in the car, it won't play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, it's not coming through on Bluetooth. And then it'll be 2 sentences. I'm like, yo, learn how to communicate a little bit more efficiently. And I think that's the one, not to toot my own horn, but like I am, when I communicate, I can communicate pretty efficiently and I can get a lot of information across in, 15, 30 seconds. And then some people, it's just like I feel like they just press the record button and then they haven't collated thoughts beforehand. So they're like talking out loud to form their thought, which then eventually comes to you, which is
Yep.
fine. That's how some people do it. But it does make communication much less efficient.
Yeah. I'm not doing that. um, so you mentioned you're doing strategy calls with people. What do those entail? Are they like X's and O's calls? Are they marketing calls, social media stuff?
So it's been a lot of so like the last three that I had a guy who had just started at had just started as an in-person personal trainer at a gym. The gym had been kind of going through a rough period because like one of the owners had died, and they were kind of static in terms. And it had happened a couple years ago, so they were really static in terms of members, and like they had money coming in, but they'd lose a client, gain a client. It was just kind of shit. And he also didn't know how to scale his own personal training business. And so we went through like, I was like, okay, well, like this is what you're going to do to get people in the door. These are the things on the back end you need to figure out. You need to figure out some kind of a CRM. You need to figure out how to get people in the door and then also have those people understand that you do personal training. So whether that's an introductory session or whatever that ends up being. And I just laid out a skeleton framework of like, follow this for the next 3 or 4 weeks, get it going, and then we can follow up. Another guy was literally, the guy I had on Friday was literally just like, he sent me over client videos and he's like, I don't know how to fix this. And then the last guy was a physical therapist who was transitioning to cash-based physical therapy out of like an insurance clinic. And he was like, yeah, I just
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do in terms of like replacing this income with this income. And he like had the conversation with him initially started being like, well, like I want to get my social media going and I want to be known as like, like the kind of like late stage ACL rehab guy. And I was like, hold on a second. You have an in-person cash-based physical therapy business. Your social media honestly doesn't matter that much. It needs to be there to have people know you exist, but you need to be doing local outreach and you need to have people in your local area, at your local gyms, at your local supplement shops, at your local chiropractic clinics, at your local doctor's offices know that you're the person that fixes people that the insurance-based physical therapist can't.
Hmm.
And so initially he came on wanting social media advice, and I was like, "You're looking at this all wrong. Like, this is where you're going to go."
Yeah. I think, uh, I think having those strategy calls is something that more people should absolutely take advantage of. Um, just being able to hop on and bounce ideas off of somebody. Yeah, you're going to spend the money up front, but it's going to save you time and energy in the back end. And truth be told, I wish mentorship was something that I reached out for much sooner than I did, because
Mm-hmm.
it just clarified me so much. And even now I still have mentors. I still have people who I bounce ideas off of. Um, and in a lot of instances it's peers, right? So like I'll call somebody that I know, like Liv's coach is someone who I rely on a lot, Austin Stout. I'll reach out to Austin, ask him a couple questions about his business, how he does certain things. He was presented with a business opportunity a couple months ago. He reached out to me, asked me some questions. And I think, having people in your circle who you trust that you can reach out to and bounce ideas off of is so incredibly valuable. And then even hiring somebody who's been there and done it before,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I've worked with people who had thriving online coaching businesses, but were getting burnt out. Well, okay, cool. Let's solve that. Let's find the bottleneck. Let's shore it up. Let's build it back to where you want it to be in a more sustainable fashion. I've worked with people who are just getting started and have zero clients. Everyone has different bottlenecks. And ultimately, if you're in the forest, you can't see your way through it. So
No.
having that person who's walked that path before, honestly, it's the same as coaching. Like how many people, I'm going to ask you this and I'm going to laugh, but how many people are getting into training and they see the accolades or the accomplishments that you've had and they just want to be more like you, minus the quad tears?
Yeah, and that's kind of the, I don't know. I generally kind of a lot, and I generally kind of feel bad for those people because I'm like, yo, like you being you is way doper than you trying to be me, because you're not. I don't even want to be me, dude. Like, come on, pick a better role model.
Fair. I always look at like when a client comes to me, there is some aspect of who I am or what I do that they want to emulate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I put myself in that position where I am that person, maybe me 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, the level of empathy kind of rises and I can see parallels in that same
Mm-hmm.
journey. Um, and I think it just puts you in a better position to realize that like your impact is so much bigger, you know?
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me. So, Tim Walcott, who's one of my best buddies ever, recommended me this book. Have you ever read Psycho Cybernetics?
I've heard of it.
Okay, 10 out of 10, great read.
Okay.
But essentially, like a lot of the reason why people gravitate to people with strong personalities and want to emulate people with strong personalities is because they can't conceptualize of themselves in the way that they currently are as being able to accomplish these things that feel so far away. And so,
Makes total sense. Yeah.
and so the beautiful thing about this book is it kind of has people realize it's like, yo, you don't need to be me to accomplish these things. You don't have to try to be more me to accomplish these things. You just have to work on the parts of you that make you think that you can accomplish these things. And honestly,
Mm,
like a lot of these conversations I have with these sorts of people, I'm like, yo, like I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've done a lot of dumb shit in my life. You don't want to make those same mistakes to have the same wisdom that I do. I can give you my guidance and feedback, but the bigger thing that you need to kind of work on here is your belief in self and your value of self, because that's going to hamstring you more than anything else. And I can't fix that for you. You have to fix that. And every single person I've recommended that book to has been like, oh fuck. Right? Because the crux of it is it's not even that they don't think they can accomplish these things. They can't conceptualize of themselves as a person who could accomplish these things.
which makes, yeah, right. So they have like zero self-efficacy and they don't even have the idea of how to get to that point because they don't even think it's possible.
Because they don't even think of themselves as a person who could make it possible.
Very interesting. What this is probably the worst debate I've ever been a part of.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, you
Just to grow.
sucked.
Yeah, fuck, I suck. Um, well, I didn't want to come on and be like, I knew that if we hopped on and had a debate, it wouldn't be a debate because we're not trying to convince each other that the other person is doing it better or not, because there is no better as long as you get results.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is like if like you had 90% churn and no one was getting better, I'd be like, hey, maybe there's some things to lateralize here. But I don't fucking care. You know what I mean? Like as long as your clients are happy, they're making progress, and you have low churn. It's like okay, well, it's like there's a billion. All roads lead to Rome, and I think that's the you know that's the big thing that I've kind of learned in the last probably 18 months has just been this idea of like there's a lot of coaches who I really really respect and are very 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 good at their jobs who do things in a fundamentally different way than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if they're really really good at their jobs and all their clients are super happy, at the end of the day, the system is just the one that aligned most closely with them psychologically. And I think that's the huge takeaway from all this. You have to find a system that aligns with you psychologically. And if you're a very measured, very controlled, very think before you speak kind of person, which is you, the system you created is perfect. And if I tried to do things the way that you do, I wouldn't be particularly effective. If you tried to do things the way that I do, you probably wouldn't be particularly effective. So it's like at its core, there's no right or wrong way. There's the one that most closely aligns with your psychological typing.
Yeah, I think if you're a client of a coach and you're listening to this, I think the big take home is find the person who supports you in the ways that you need to be supported and don't settle for anything less, because at the end of the day you're paying for a service, and if you're not getting that service, you need to get out.
Yeah.
Like there are way too many amazing coaches, not just the two of us. Like there are so many amazing coaches that do a great job, and hopefully more of them take this podcast as a call to action to be more front facing and put out the work that they do, because that's the only way people are going to figure out that you exist.
Yeah. Can't get clients if no one knows you're there.
Very true. Stu, what do you got in the pipe for the next little bit?
Well, we got friends visiting mid-March. Coach and Paul, our great, lovely, wonderful friend Paul Hewitt is March 29th.
My new
And
neighbor.
then, yeah, your new neighbor. And then other than that, just continuing we're onboarding a new coach right now. So we're going through kind of this group Facebook coaching thing for him to kind of put his feet in the fire and get him to figure it out. So
Okay.
onboarding him, his name's Jeremy Ferry. He'll be done. We start on the 24th, so another 3 weeks.
Sweet.
And then other than that, just living life in Florida.
That's sweet, man. Yeah, we're onboarding another coach as well. We unfortunately had to let one of our coaches go, so we replaced her with someone who we're very excited about. She's awesome. We'll make that announcement really soon. And then, yeah, I was just telling you off air, we sold our house last night and we got our visas. So we're heading to the US of A as of April 1st. Yeah, a lot of really cool stuff happening, man. So I'm excited that we got to do this.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I'll have links to where you can find Stuart in the show notes if you want to shit talk him online. And please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We'll catch you on the next one.